What if the Stoics actually had something in line and in common with the Christians? Welcome to The Forge. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. We're talking about self-control. Stoicism, philosophical practice, philosophical school. They talked a lot about self-control. It's very much reason, inner virtue, that kind of thing. And Marcus Aurelius wrote the Meditations. And Marcus Aurelius was considered kind of the last great Stoic philosopher, and he put forth a lot about self-control. And there's a passage in there that I want to read, and I'm going to connect to Christianity because I think sometimes you'll be told, no, you can't look at philosophy. And guys, we love philosophy, right? Like, guys love history. We love philosophy. We love getting into that stuff, especially if you're about self-development and all that. So I'm going to read to you Meditations. He says, whenever you are forced by some current difficult events to feel troubled or annoyed, return to yourself as soon as possible, and don't stay out of sync longer than you have to, because this way you'll be better able to handle your role next time and maintain balance if you constantly train yourself to do this. Once disturbed, immediately return to your calm and start over. Now, what does that mean? You are going to get shook up in life. It's just a matter of fact. When we get shook up, our emotions raise. So often the process is there's a stimuli, something happens, and then before we even have a chance to think about it, there's an emotional reaction, a physiological reaction to that stimulus. The question becomes, do you ride that emotional reaction out? Now, we know, we watch it. Most people emotionally react. And for those of you guys who are like, emotions are crap and I don't follow emotions don't count. Here's my question. Do you get angry? Anger is an emotion. And some of the most angry, unhinged people are the ones who say, I don't listen to emotions. I don't do emotions. No, what you're talking about is you don't cry. You don't get sad. You get angry. So what Marcus Aurelius is saying here is get yourself on the inner back to the stable place as quick as possible, right? So you'll have that high or that peak of the emotion. You got to let it tail off. Now you may say, yeah, but that's Marcus Aurelius. You know, I'm Christian. I'm not going to listen to the Stoics. Those guys were led by Satan. One tiny thought about that. God intertwined truth through all of creation. His truth is so true and so expansive that we are going to run across it, whether we are Christian or not. Now, we may not ascribe credit to God for that truth, but it doesn't mean we can't recognize it when it's there. And this truth of self-control weaves through just about every philosophical practice, every religion, outside of, like the hedonists and the nihilists, right? But the concept of self-control and the importance of self-control everywhere you look. And so we have to decide, okay, is that because God believes in self-control for us, believes it's important, made it a truth about us? Or is everybody wicked, except for the Christian who talks about self-control? Or better yet, the Christians who say you don't need self-control. So I'm going to read something else to you. This is the Old Testament. Solomon, in Proverbs 16:32, said, Better a patient person than a warrior, one with self-control than one who takes a city. This contrast is very much the idea of self-control as the foundation in the most important battle. And whether you talk about Plato, whether you talk about Buddha, Marcus Aurelius, all of these minds that affected the world talk about the inner struggle, the inner battle. And so when Solomon's saying better a patient person than a warrior, yeah, you can kill a bunch of people. Strength, rage, overpowering. But the mastery of yourself is greater. That's a bigger battle. That's a harder battle fought. And a lot of us don't care. Or we know the battle's too hard, so we look outwards because we know we can win those battles. And we just won't worry about what's on the inside. He continues, one with self-control than one who takes a city. In other words, you've done more if you conquer yourself with self-control, as opposed to you've conquered a whole city. Now, maybe you say, oh, well, that's the Old Testament, not the New Testament. James 1:19-20, James writes, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. And that is the Marcus Aurelius thought process in a nutshell. If you're quick to listen, now your emotions may rise, but you're quick to listen, okay? The emotions are rising, you're not acting on them, you're listening. Slow to speak, don't just snap, right? Get those emotions back to stable, and then you can make good decisions. You can find solutions. And what Marcus Aurelius is saying is the more you practice this habit, the quicker you will be at coming back to stability. And this is a very Christian virtue because there is truly self-control in the Christian life. Temptation is hard. Emotions are difficult. Desires grow. What do we do with them? And we cannot expect the Lord to take care of them for us. We can't expect that God will remove all desire from our lives, all tension, all struggle. Why would we bother praying, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil? Unless temptation has the potential to be there in our lives. And now we rely on the Lord in faith, but we also have a job to do. And I'm a firm believer that's where self-control comes in. Now, I wrote a blog about this on the Forge website. You can go to theforge.org/blog, check that out. I've got the 7 virtues, working through those. Walk away with this. I want you to test this, think about this week. When you get yourself into a tough situation, or you're thrust into a tough situation, what is your emotion that comes out? And how do you handle it? Do you handle it? Or do you just spark off? Is the first thing to respond, your first response, is that words? Or is it listening? Now, I've had those times where I'm listening, but I am like shaking my foot because I want to say something in anger. And some of my biggest regrets are when I spoke out of anger and frustration, because you can't necessarily get those words back. Words change things. They really do. I think sometimes we think, oh, I can say whatever I want and all of it will go back to normal. Not necessarily. So I'm going to challenge you to really think about what is this concept that Marcus Aurelius is talking about. How do we practice self-control in the heat of the moment? Check it out. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Keep going, keep pushing. Love you guys. Have a good day.